We're coming on the air tonight with extreme weather battering the south and west, a potentially deadly storm surge washing away parts of Texas, and a blistering heat wave breaking records in California. We are live coast to coast in just a minute. Plus, the tense back and forth over visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House. As President Biden, he's defiant in a new interview, insisting voters are with him, even if elites are not. What you should know about the state of the race and our team's new reporting. Then, in our original, former President Trump now distancing himself from a controversial plan to overhaul the government as we know it. So how does that shape up with the official Republican proposal just released today? Plus, the AI revolution trying to shake up the pageant world. How? By becoming one of them. We'll explain later in the show. Plus, a superstar in court today in one of the most high-profile cases in years. We are there live. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we start with that urgent new warning about a dangerous and possibly deadly storm surge after Hurricane Beryl slammed into Texas as a Category 1. About to show you here all the flooding from the water getting pushed in by really intense winds. This is Sargent Beach in Texas. Take a look. You're going to see homes destroyed, dozens of them now underwater. We're talking wind at 80 miles an hour, water levels up to 6 feet with rain still coming down now. Even a few tornadoes popping up as this storm turns deadly. 2 people reported killed by trees falling on their homes outside Houston. Millions of people are in the dark as we speak. Internet service is patchy, and this thing's a travel nightmare. More than 1,300 flights canceled, most of them into or out of Texas airports. And that's not even the only weather system threatening people tonight, as dangerous and record-breaking heat is fueling out-of-control wildfires. We've got it all covered with Steve Patterson in California, meteorologist Bill Karen standing by. But I want to start with Kathy Park, who is live for us in Texas. And Kathy, listen, the power is out. People can't get online. Some people have no homes to return to. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing tonight.
So, Hallie, you are probably seeing a big change from what we saw earlier this morning. The skies have cleared. The storm has pushed on out of here, but we are still seeing hazards just about everywhere here in Houston. And keep in mind, this storm, as you mentioned, made landfall early this morning along the coast and then pushed inland, but it still packed quite a punch. Earlier this morning, we were tracking heavy bands of rain, extreme winds, and all of that really led to this, what you're seeing right now. We're right by the bayou, and you can still see some of the water spilling over this roadway. I can tell you this road completely shut in both directions. We haven't seen any cars come through here because floodwaters have blocked both of these roads. And these are scenes that are playing out all across Houston. In fact, earlier today, we spoke with one motorist about the conditions today. Take a listen.
Every year, it seems like the hurricanes are predicted to be much worse than they actually turn out to be. And for the first one of this season, I mean, I think it's a wake-up call here.
And Hallie, in addition to the flooding that we continue to track, we're also following massive power outages, hundreds of thousands of customers still without power. It could be days, perhaps, before everyone is back online, but the temperature keeps climbing. We can actually feel the heat starting to accumulate here in Houston. But we should also say that this storm has also turned deadly as well. Right now, at least 2 confirmed fatalities in Harris County. We know that trees actually fell onto homes, and that's how those 2 individuals were killed. Hallie?
And this is another big issue here, this heat that is moving into Texas, as you talk about there, Kathy, as people don't have power to try to cool them down. All of it, Texas clearly in a moment of crisis, as the governor is actually not in the state. He's overseas and apparently getting some flack about it. Talk to us.
Yeah, there is some fallout that we are tracking on social media because he tweeted not too long ago about his ongoing trip in South Korea. He said it was a business trip that he is trying to broker with South Korean officials. Meanwhile, we saw a string of comments, people criticizing this move, saying, look, we have this storm that has barreled through this area. A lot of folks still reeling, kind of assessing the damage right now. Hundreds of thousands of people without power. It could be days before all of that is restored. So a lot of criticism there, especially on social media. But we should also point out that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is standing in his place right now, holding press conferences. So is the mayor of Houston, just kind of keeping abreast on the situation. Take a listen.
What I want to emphasize in this briefing is, please, Houstonians, anyone that can hear my voice, shelter in place. Shelter in place. We're in an emergency. We're in a rescue mode, life safety.
And Hallie, a lot of these warnings actually came last night. They were told to stay in place, shelter in place around 10 o'clock last night. We were kind of monitoring the conditions during the overnight hours. Not a lot of cars on the roadways, but I can tell you right now that the skies have opened up and the weather has improved, we are still seeing a lot of folks coming out, just kind of surveying the scene, and then a lot of folks taking it by foot as well. Hallie?
Kathy Park, live for us out there in Texas. Kathy, thank you. Let me get to Steve Patterson now, because, Steve, we talked about the extreme weather hitting not just the South, but also out west where you are in California. You've got these huge fires burning, evacuation orders near some of these very popular summer tourist spots like Yosemite, like Tahoe. Talk to us about the latest.
Yeah, the thing that is extreme about all of this, Hallie, is how early it's happening. Usually fire season in earnest actually starts like heading into the fall, because it's the combination of the winds mixed with the heat. This year, I mean, I swear there have been 20 major fires burning at all times out west since mid to late June. That is beyond unusual. That could be a historic fire season, because thousands of acres have already burned. Hundreds of people have been evacuated in multiple places. It has been abhorrent so far. It is this awful game of whack-a-mole, and I don't mean to make light of it, but mechanically, as soon as some of the fires lay down, new ones sprout up, and that's what we're seeing right now. Right now, the biggest fire in California is the Lake Fire. It's more than 20,000 acres. It's 8% contained, which sounds like it's relatively small, but they've made some progress, which is good. That fire is burning near Santa Barbara. It's also burning near Michael Jackson's old Neverland Ranch. It's affecting a bunch of ranches. That one it's on the very edge of. That's a 27,000-acre property. It's actually bigger than the fire that it's burning near right now, but that's a danger as well as several communities in that area. But just to give you a sense of this, I mean, one of the fires, there were 13 hikers had to be rescued from a fire burning near Tahoe. That fire is only about 176 acres, less than 200 acres. Again, a 20,000-acre fire and a fire that's less than 200 acres, and people had to be rescued from that. It tells you how quickly these fires can burn, because the wind can cut through this bone-dry grass, which is all exacerbated, and I want to say this, by this incredible, extreme, disgusting heat dome that we are all in. We are trapped in this heat, and so too are the dry grasses. So too are the firefighters that are trying to fight these fires. You see the containment numbers on your screen. Those are relatively good. Again, they're pushing them out, but tomorrow, the next day, the day after that, that screen's going to look totally different. And that's what we've been experiencing this year so far, Hallie. It's been pretty miserable for firefighters trying to do their best, but they're out there in 110, 115-degree heat trying to put out a fire that is freshly fueled by this heat dome. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, thank you very much, live for us from L.A. Let's get to Bill Cairns now. So, Bill, when will this heat dome dissipate and give folks some relief?
Towards the weekend, but it's only going to like temporarily give relief. And, Hallie, it's just one thing or another. On the East Coast, we got like extreme humidity. On the West Coast, we got these all-time record high temperatures. And then, of course, we're still dealing with Beryl. And we had that as a hurricane this morning. And now we're in the middle of this tornado outbreak from that hurricane and the bands around it. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tornado warnings right now active in Louisiana and East Texas and now into Arkansas, all because of Beryl and the outer bands from it. So, sometimes you get these storms and they're just, they produce tornadoes. Some don't produce a lot, and some tropical systems do. And this one's turning out to be one that is. We just have a new one reported just south of Shreveport. So we got 3 tornado warnings lined up here. And you can see this is for the center of Beryl. There's another tornado report right here. So zooming in on the Shreveport area, it looks like these storms are moving at about 40 miles per hour. So this is going to be probably tornado sirens going off in Shreveport, Louisiana, in about 10 to 15 minutes from right now. We got one cell here, we got another one here, and another here. So 3 different possible tornado producing thunderstorms, all approaching Interstate 20. And with the storm itself, you can notice it's starting to fall apart a little bit. And just look at this band of heavy rain wrapping all the way around it. This is where we're getting flash flooding problems, too, right along the Louisiana border. The storm itself, when it made landfall, for a Category 1, this was pretty impressive. 14, 15 inches of rain in Alvin. Houston downtown had about a foot of rain. That's why we had so many water problems there. And for a Category 1, these wind gusts were impressive, too. I've seen Category 2s not produce wind gusts like this. Freeport was almost up to 100. Galveston, 92, 80, about 89 to Matagorda. And even in downtown Houston, there was a wind gust of 86 miles per hour. And you could see all those flash flood warnings in those same spots that actually are under the tornado warning. warnings, and another 4 to 6 inches is likely tonight, Arkansas into Missouri. And Hallie, as far as the heat goes, I don't know if you stepped outside in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. It feels right now in the shade like 105 degrees, one of the hottest spots on all of the East Coast.
My friend, there's a reason I was asking about the heat dome, asking for a friend, many of them who live here in the neighborhood. Bill Cairns, thank you very much. Lots to watch for over the next week. Appreciate it. To our other big headline tonight, a defiant President Biden insisting again today he will stay in this race in a new interview as questions swirl about whether or not he should. And his White House now refusing to say whether a Parkinson's expert who visited the White House at least 8 times in 8 months was there to see President Biden himself. Listen to some of this.
I'm not going to confirm a name. What I can share with you is that the president has seen a neurologist for his physical 3 times. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No, I'm not going to confirm a specialist, any specialist that comes to the White House out of privacy.
Okay, let's be clear here. We don't know the reason for these trips, the nature of them. We haven't gotten any comment from that expert, whose name, by the way, was in the visitors' logs. And the White House had said President Biden's physicals have found no sign of Parkinson's. And again, because you can track these visits on that log, our White House team cross-checked the timing. Turns out the president was only physically in D.C. 3 of those 8 times that the doctor visited the White House. Now, the president himself is telling Morning Joe today, this is before that news broke in most major outlets, that he's tested cognitively in the day-to-day course of doing his job, doing interviews, holding meetings, etc. And listen, defiant is the word of the day because that's how he sounded as he decried the disconnect he sees between the Beltway and the Rust Belt. Listen.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention.
I want to show you here the lawmakers, at least some of them, who have called on the president to withdraw from the race after his disastrous debate performance. With lawmakers back on Capitol Hill today and a meeting set for later tonight between the president and members of the influential Congressional Black Caucus, according to 2 sources, who may be throwing him a lifeline. You've got the president also talking with donors late today, stacking his calendar with public events in what could be the biggest political fight of his decades-long career. We've got team coverage on this. Sahil Kapoor standing by on the Hill, but I want to start with Hallie Rafa near the White House. Hallie, a critical moment for the president, right? There's a lot to this, but let's start with some of that new reporting about this Parkinson's specialist making trips to the White House. There's a lot of context on this one, but talk us through the dynamics in the building behind you.
Yeah, Hallie, and as you mentioned, the White House knew going into this week how incredibly critical it would be in really determining its next steps, the president's political future. And in an effort to offer some clarity after this new revelation that, according to these White House visitor logs that are public, that a neurologist visited the White House at least 8 times over the last 8 months, trying to explain and offer some clarity, the White House only seemed to have created more confusion during, as you saw in that clip there, a very, at times, contentious press briefing with Karine Jean-Pierre as reporters were trying to get down to the details here. What happened, though, is obviously the opposite of what the White House wanted right now to talk about in that briefing, that NATO summit that they expect to be a great opportunity for the president to dispel these growing concerns about his age, his mental acuity, show his foreign policy chops. But what happened was the opposite, and we started to see some holes in the information that we have about the president's health. And I think it's important to note the reasoning for this push to have some clarity, because there has been mixed messaging from within the White House before as it relates to the president's health. You'll remember right after his debate performance, they talked about how he had a cold. The White House and the president had differing talking points as far as what happened after that, as far as a doctor checkup. But today, definitely a contentious press briefing as reporters tried to get more clarity. And frankly, the appetite is not going to go away, Hallie.
You know, one of the points that President Biden has tried to make here more broadly amid these questions of whether or not he should stay in the race, and again, he is making very clear he is in, is this idea that what the so-called chattering class, if you will, the inside the Beltway folks say versus what voters on the ground actually say. And it appears that the Biden campaign is looking to some core parts of the Democratic constituency, black voters, union workers, for example, to help essentially get him a lifeline here. This is something I talked about with somebody who I know you talked to, Cedric Richmond, a co-chair of the Biden-Harris campaign. Let me play a piece of that interview.
The president said he's not going anywhere. And we're going to go and we're going to win this election. It's too important for the American people. And we're going to remind people that actions speak louder than words.
More of that tonight on Nightly News. But talk to us about the actions then, because the president's got a busy week ahead. He's got this high-profile summit. He's got an even more high-profile solo news conference coming up soon, too.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're seeing this shift in the president's argument for why he wants to stay in this race. He's saying it's because voters want him to stay, whereas for months we heard him say, you know, it's because he is the best positioned, the most qualified to defeat Trump a second time. And we heard that again today. We saw it in that lengthy letter the president said to Democrats on Capitol Hill, saying the reason he is the Democratic nominee is because that's what voters wanted in those primaries, that voters positioned him to be the nominee. He also said that he's blocking out what millionaires say, that he only cares about what voters say. And now we're seeing this travel from not just the president, but the four principals ramp up. The First Lady herself hitting 3 states today. Listen to some of her exchanges while on the campaign trail.
Dr. Biden, do you have any message to House Democrats who are calling for your husband to drop out of the race? How are you feeling about the state of the race? All right, lady. Why are you screaming at me? You know me. Don't scream at me. Just let me talk.
Hallie, as these concerns grow, these calls for the president to step aside, these interactions between reporters and these 4 principals seem to be only growing more contentious, and we're going to see how that plays out later this week when the president himself hits the campaign trail.
Hallie, Rafa, thank you. I want to get to Sahil Kapoor now with the view from Capitol Hill. So we talked about the idea that the Biden campaign is turning to this coalition, it seems, of voters who helped get him into the White House. Look at where he's been. He was at a black church in Philly on Sunday. He was at a union office in Harrisburg. He's headed to the NAACP convention next week. And now tonight, I know that you are reporting that the president is set to meet virtually with members of the influential Congressional Black Caucus, none of whom so far have called on him to withdraw from this race.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. We do expect this to be a virtual meeting, not in person, between President Biden and the Congressional Black Caucus. And this comes as the CBC has emerged as a vital lifeboat for President Biden in the midst of this intra-party storm over whether he should stay as the 2024 presidential nominee or whether he should go. This caucus and the voters it represents are very influential, both on Capitol Hill, but also in the Democratic Party in terms of choosing the nominee. And the fact that if President Biden were hypothetically to step aside, the likeliest replacement would be Vice President Kamala Harris, who would become, should she be elected, the first black woman president in the history of this country. The fact that the CBC is sticking with Biden is very significant on a number of levels. And of course, this week on Capitol Hill will be extremely important in determining whether lawmakers end up kind of sticking with President Biden, however reluctantly, or whether the dam breaks and whether there's a critical mass that comes out against the president staying. Let's take a listen to how some red state Democrats are handling it. Here's Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
I think this week is going to play out. I think everyone just calms down a little bit and waits for this week. I think this week is going to be a crucial time, and this week I think it'll tell you an awful lot.
Now, Manchin is not running for re-election this year, but one person who is Senator Jon Tester in Montana. And he said in a statement that President Biden has got to prove to the American people, including me, that he is up to the job for another 4 years, Hallie.
So really quickly then, Sahil, you heard Senator Manchin, I think it was, say, basically the president has until the end of this week to kind of show Democrats what they've got, as these discussions are not ending where you are on Capitol Hill. It is not as though the president's interview with Morning Joe today came out and, stopped the discussion around this.
No, it certainly hasn't stopped the discussion around this, but the president is trying to stamp out this criticism, convey to Democratic members of Congress and Democratic candidates in that letter that he's going to be the nominee and they had better stick with him. The implication here is that not only could, failure to rally behind him end up electing Donald Trump, it could also hurt Democrats down the ballot. He's not saying this, but this is how it's being perceived by some Democrats. In that letter, he said the voters and the voters alone decide the nominee of the Democratic Party. And I think that's where we're going to hear a lot of discussion about who is best to defeat Donald Trump later this week. Hallie.
Sahil Kapoor live for us on the Hill. Thank you. Let's take you out to New Mexico now, where Alec Baldwin is in court as we speak, as his lawyers try to hammer out which evidence and testimony should be allowed during his trial, set to begin tomorrow with jury selection. Look at this. You see Baldwin there. That's today, charged in the shooting death of the cinematographer on the set of his movie Rust. And today's pretrial motions setting the stage for one of the most high-profile trials of the year. Now remember, Baldwin was rehearsing with a prop gun for a scene on October 21st back in 2021 when the gun went off, killing Halyna Hutchins. Baldwin has said he did not pull the trigger. He says the gun misfired a bullet. Baldwin was initially charged in January 2023 with 2 counts, both dropped in April of that year. Then a Santa Fe grand jury earlier this year renewed the manslaughter charge that he is now facing. Chloe Malas is in Santa Fe. She's joining us now. Chloe, talk about today in court. There's been a lot of back and forth about how the state is making their case in particular, right?
Hallie, the judge has ruled on several different motions about what evidence can be admissible during this 2-week trial and what sort of witness testimony. And there was a big win for Baldwin's defense team in that the judge ruled against the prosecution bringing up anything having to do with Baldwin also serving as a producer on the set. This was something that was a big part of the discussion over the last few years, is that Baldwin not just starring in the film, that he had some sort of a responsibility when it came to the safety standards on set. I want you to listen to a little bit from Johnson, one of the prosecutors, of what she had to say today.
That his conduct on set was reckless and it was in essentially wanton disregard for the safety of others. And his role as a producer made him keenly aware of the safety rules that apply on sets, what his responsibilities are.
So tomorrow is when jury selection begins, Hallie, and these 12 jurors, they're not going to know about Baldwin being a producer. That's not going to get into, they're not going to get into the weeds of that. So again, for the defense, they will strictly be talking about him as the actor holding the gun that day.
To say that it's been a long road of legal twists and turns is a bit of an understatement here, right? It has been a little dramatic to get to this point here, and of course, notwithstanding the initial shooting and the death of Halyna Hutchins. What is the expectation for once this trial really gets started, and this question mark over whether Baldwin will take the stand in his own defense?
Well, so there are a lot of big questions. So let's start with Baldwin. So it's completely unclear whether or not he's going to take the stand in his own defense and testify. NBC News, we've reached out to his legal team for comment. They haven't said anything about that yet. And it could be a game time decision. When you talk to legal analysts, Hallie, you know, there are people on both sides, differing opinions. Some people say that when you put your client on the stand, that sometimes that can cause more harm than good. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer, just 4 months ago, she was convicted of the same charge of involuntary manslaughter. She's currently serving 18 months behind bars in a state jail. She is coming to Santa Fe, New Mexico this weekend. She's going to be called to the stand likely next week, but it's unclear if she's going to cooperate or potentially plead the fifth, Hallie.
Chloe Malas, live for us there in Santa Fe. Chloe, thank you for being there. I know more to come as the days continue this week. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show tonight, Republicans are out with a new party platform, basically stating for the public where they stand on the biggest issues that matter to you. More on that as the former president tries to distance himself from a controversial blueprint for a possible second term. Plus, why the Johns Hopkins Medical School says it'll now be free for most students. Alaska is trying to crack down on tourists, but some of them are pushing back. We're going to tell you how coming up in just a little bit. But first, to tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's the Republican National Committee laying out its 2024 policy platform, adopting former President Trump's preferred America First positions. This is a big deal. It's a first glimpse as to the agenda they're running on. But it comes as the former president is now distancing himself from a controversial blueprint for a second Trump term, one that's been used by his political opponents against him, called Project 2025. Former President Donald Trump in a new post online insisting he knows nothing about Project 2025, with no idea who's behind it, calling some of the controversial 900-page proposal to overhaul the federal government ridiculous and abysmal. The comments coming after Democrats pushed to tie Mr. Trump to the plan, created not by the Trump campaign itself, but by some former Trump administration officials working with conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation. Its president coming under fire just last week for this.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
So what is Project 2025?
What we're doing is systematically preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state.
That battle plan outlining several key proposals, including a federal government under much tighter presidential control. Even now, independent agencies like the Department of Justice would answer almost entirely to Mr. Trump. And it calls for replacing thousands of civil employees with political appointees, presumably loyal to the former president. Project 2025 calls for more spending for a U.S.-Mexico border wall, a signature Trump proposal back in 2016.
Build that wall.
And on this side of the border, big cuts to corporate taxes and income tax for America's highest earners. The plan taking aim at what it calls woke culture warriors, calling for deleting a long list of terms from all federal rules, including sexual orientation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and gender identity, and eliminating the education department. It's not uncommon for think tanks to create wish lists for governments in waiting, but with the race for the White House all but deadlocked, Democratic opposition to the plan has ramped up against what Congressman Jared Huffman, behind the Stop Project 2025 task force, calls a dystopian plot.
I think what troubles me the most is just the explicitness of the extremism, and the people who are saying these things are the most inner circle leaders of Donald Trump's political world.
Those behind Project 2025 accuse Democrats of fear-mongering.
This really would tee up an incoming administration to achieve more than we've ever seen under a conservative president before.
Now, a spokesperson for Project 2025 says in a post on X that the group does not speak for any candidate or campaign. And in response to those controversial comments on an American revolution, the head of the Heritage Foundation tells the New York Times, quote, "These patriots are committed to peaceful revolution at the ballot box." Now, President Biden, for his part, in a statement, says Project 2025 would give Mr. Trump limitless power over our daily lives. I want to bring in our Vaughn Hilliard, who's been taking a look, got his hands on that new Republican Party platform for us. And Vaughn, a bunch of questions here, but let me start. How is it similar or different to what we've seen in the Project 2025 agenda?
Right, Hallie. And actually, if I may, first, in the bad timing category, I had a scheduled interview with the director of Project 2025 scheduled for literally today, but I got a call on Saturday night after that post on social media by Donald Trump, and that interview was canceled with the director of Project 2025. And in these last hours, the Republican Party, at least the platform committee to the convention next week, has approved that the policy, the platform for the Republican Party, very much so in the shape and the mindset of that of Donald Trump. A couple points. Number one, the Project 2025 platform is more than 900 pages, and essentially it's a handbook that would be able to be handed to every department and agency in a second Trump administration. And, of course, some of the proposals were concerning to individuals that included Donald Trump, clearly. But Donald Trump, I should note that one of the authors of Project 2025 was also the policy director of the Republican National Committee's platform committee here that just wrote this document that was approved here today. So there is, to note, a lot of overlap.
Okay, let's talk about the policy platform overall, because interestingly, Vaughn, it softens the Republican Party's official position on some key issues like same-sex marriage, but perhaps more importantly on abortion access as well, at a moment when clearly Republicans are falling behind as it relates to polling Democrats on this one.
Right, and that is where, if you look at the past party platform that was last adopted by the Republican Party in 2016, it very explicitly called for what they called a human life amendment to be added to the U.S. Constitution, and for legislation to be passed up on Capitol Hill, federal legislation, all but banning abortion. And so you're looking at this policy platform that was put in, or at least passed by the platform committee here today under Donald Trump. It takes that a step back, and instead, it does not call for a federal abortion ban, but instead suggests, as Donald Trump often does on the campaign trail, that this is a decision that should be left to the states. And in a similar way, we saw the 2016 policy platform on same-sex marriage say that marriage should be between one man and one woman. That language was removed from this 2024 version to only say that the sanctity of marriage should be upheld.
Okay, let me talk about the other big news this week. It is news that has yet to happen, which is the official pick of a running mate from former President Trump. It's got to be this week, right? I mean, the convention starts on Monday. You think it has to happen before Monday?
Right. The clock is ticking here. There is going to be a campaign event down in Florida tomorrow that our colleague John Allen has been told by an advisor to Senator Marco Rubio that the Florida senator will be attending. We are told that he is a potential VP finalist himself here, but he then has a campaign rally, Hallie, in Pennsylvania on Saturday, so that announcement could happen then. But you said it. It's a week from today in Milwaukee that the Republican National Convention begins, so you can start the clock here. It's going to be at least within the next 7-8 days for that individual to get the call.
The clock has been started. I'm waiting for you to go pitch a tent on Marco Rubio's driveway, so I'm sure that's your next live shot, friend. Thank you much. Lots to watch. We'll be talking again. Appreciate you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Paramount and Skydance will merge. They've now come to a deal after this whole months-long drama, saga, pick your noun, and just weeks after a similar deal totally fell apart. They plan to, for example, use AI to be more efficient, to cut costs, and to rebuild Paramount Plus. Number 2, Columbia University says it'll remove 3 administrators from their positions over text messages that, in their words, disturbingly touched on ancient anti-Semitic tropes. The administrators sent those texts during a campus discussion about Jewish life. Columbia first put them on leave last month. The dean of Columbia College, one of the undergrad schools, has apologized and will stay in his role. Number 3, the FAA will require the inspections of some 2,600 Boeing 737s because passenger oxygen masks may not work in an emergency. Apparently, they've gotten reports of oxygen generators getting out of position. Boeing tells NBC News that a new adhesive it introduced years ago did allow some units to shift and that it's now gone back to its original adhesive. Number 4, Bloomberg Philanthropies says it's giving $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion to the Johns Hopkins University, which means med students from families earning less than $300,000 a year will go to med school for free. No tuition there. You've seen the undergrad campus here. Its founder, Michael Bloomberg, the Philanthropies founder, went to Johns Hopkins for undergrad. He says lowering some of these financial barriers will let more students pursue careers in medicine that they're passionate about. And number 5, the U.S. men's soccer team rolling out the roster today for the Paris Olympics. First time since 2008 that the men will compete in the games, since they didn't qualify the last few times. They're going to face off against France July 24th, 2 days before the opening ceremony. Get your calendars ready. When we come back, super scary moment caught on camera in New Hampshire. We'll tell you how a 17-year-old stopped an out-of-control boat. Look at that. Plus, why the French president is refusing to accept the resignation of the country's prime minister. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a pretty scary rescue caught on camera in New Hampshire. Look at this. That's a boat spinning out of control around a busy lake. The driver of the boat had fallen overboard. Look at this 17-year-old jumping from the jet ski he was riding, jumping straight onto the boat. That is incredible, very scary and dangerous, but he was okay. He got the boat under control before anybody else got hurt. Just amazing. Out of our Western Bureau, the capital of Alaska might ban cruise ships with more than 250 passengers from docking on Saturdays. Some locals in Juneau say the number of visitors has been overwhelming, but then others say, well, wait a second. If you ban the big cruise ships and all those people on weekends, that's going to hurt tourism in town. The whole thing is set to go up for a vote in October. Also out of our Western Bureau, a mountain lion cub getting released back into the wild in California 7 months after he was hit by a car. The local Humane Society found him on the side of the road and nursed him back to health. Now they say he's fully recovered. He's also getting a GPS collar so they can keep an eye on him. Let's take you overseas now, because tonight in France, uncertainty and political limbo after a pretty stunning left-wing surge in the final round of voting in elections there for parliament. Thousands of people, want to show you, hitting the streets to celebrate the victory over the right-wing National Rally Party. Police in Paris having to use tear gas to clear out the crowds. But tonight, the political system is in more disarray than it was before the vote, with President Macron meeting with the prime minister, urging him not to resign, as is tradition, to assure the stability of the country. NBC's Josh Letterman is joining us now from Paris. A ton of turnout here, the most in 4 decades. So how did the left pull this off, and where does this go next?
Well, they pulled it off, Hallie, by forming a last-minute firewall against the far right. Essentially, in the first round of voting, voters were split between multiple candidates. There was a leftist candidate, a centrist candidate, a far-right candidate. In the second round, the left and the centrists essentially consolidated their vote around one, not the far-right candidate, giving voters only one other option, and that was enough to keep the far right from claiming that majority. As far as what goes on from here, that is the big question. It is going to be very uncertain, an unprecedented period of divided government for France.
Big gamble from Macron here by dissolving parliament, calling for this snap election. Did it pay off?
Not really. It paid off in the fact that the far right did not get the votes that they were expected to get, but it did not pay off in terms of him maintaining any kind of a majority or a coalition under which he can govern. In fact, he had a prime minister of his party before, Gabriel Attal. He's not going to anymore. He's going to have to pick someone from the left. And so all of the experts here, the political scientists we've been speaking to, say they simply cannot understand the logic of why President Macron went ahead with this gamble. But certainly it did not lead to a situation where he's in a better political space than he was before.
Of course, you're standing on streets where in just about 2 weeks, tourists will be flooding because of the Olympics set to kick off in Paris not long from now. I don't want to draw connections or pull threads where threads don't exist, but you've got on the one hand political turmoil in the country that on the other hand is hosting this humongous international, highly watched event very soon.
That's right. We've been looking into what the actual implications of that are. It is true that certain government ministries, like the Interior Ministry, which oversees security, we don't know who's going to be running that 3 weeks from now when the Olympic Games get started. That having been said, most of the arrangements have been made a long time ago. Authorities here are saying it's not actually going to change anything on the ground. But the reality is it's not a good look for France. This is their moment in the spotlight to really showcase their country in front of the entire world. And their political system is in a period of turmoil with a lot of uncertainty about whether they're actually going to be able to govern going forward. And so it's clear this is not the face that France wanted to put on to the rest of the world during these upcoming Olympic Games, Hallie.
Josh Letterman, thank you very much. Also overseas, the Indian Prime Minister is in Russia tonight, where he had his first visit with the Russian leader since the invasion of Ukraine. You can see them both here as Moscow is launching one of its biggest attacks on Ukraine in months, hitting a children's hospital in Kyiv, killing at least 2 people and hurting 50 others, including kids. You see it here, first responders desperately searching for anybody who might be trapped. Other attacks across the country have hit homes, a college, and a business center. In all, 37 people killed, 170 hurt. Danielle Hamamdjian is joining us now. Explain this visit to Russia by Prime Minister Modi here, the relationship between these two, as Modi is kind of walking this pretty fine line.
He is walking a fine line, and for the United States, it's a relationship that's concerning, and American officials have conveyed those concerns to their Indian counterparts. Publicly, India has said that high on the agenda will be fixing the trade imbalance, essentially India wanting to export more of its goods and services to Russia. Where the Ukrainian war is concerned, India has not criticized or condemned Russia at all since the beginning of the war in February 2022, and has urged both sides to resolve things through dialogue and diplomatically, all the while buying a lot more cheap Russian oil, which has been shunned by the West. So you're right, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, walking a fine line there. But during, of course, this period of the war, Russia has gotten closer to China. China, of course, being a rival to India. And so that fine line of keeping and maintaining relations with the West, but also ensuring Russia doesn't get too close to China.
Of course, back here at home, President Biden is hosting this critical NATO summit this week, and this attack in Kyiv on that children's hospital comes right before that. We know from senior administration officials that there are expected to be new announcements, they say, about support for Ukraine here. Talk us through any connection.
Well, Ukraine and others will say that it's certainly not a coincidence that this happened on the eve of this summit. Volodymyr Zelensky is certainly expecting to ask for more air defense systems, something that he's been asking for repeatedly. But Russia, on the other hand, has said, and this is not the first time that it's claimed, that every time there is a NATO summit on the eve Ukraine claims it was attacked on its soil and justifies its request for more money and more weapons. What we do know is that there is going to be a UN meeting tomorrow regarding this attack on the children's hospital, which Zelensky has called a war crime. And during this meeting, Russia has said that it will present its version of events of what happened today.
Danielle Hamemjian, thank you very much for that reporting. Coming up here on the show, closing arguments beginning today here at home in the bribery trial of a sitting U.S. senator. We're going to explain where things stand in just a sec. So the federal corruption trial against sitting Senator Bob Menendez is hitting a new phase today, with prosecutors kicking off closing arguments after weeks of testimony. And the New Jersey Democrats accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, trading state secrets for cash, for gold bars, even mortgage payments. Here's the timing. The jury, we think, will hear more from prosecutors tomorrow, and then the defense begins its closing arguments in a case that could end the three-term senator's long political career. Menendez has pleaded not guilty. But this is not the first time he's been investigated for getting too cozy with his donors. NBC's Tom Winter looks at the history of allegations against him in our breakdown.
Senator Robert Menendez, elected to office decade after decade.
The government has failed to prove every aspect of its case.
And now for almost a decade, answering questions about federal investigations and corruption charges.
The senator and his wife accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes.
In the midst of his biggest legal challenge yet, experts say, New Jersey's senior Democratic senator charged with accusations he's been criminally cozy with his benefactors just last year.
Can a convicted felon win re-election?
But the senator's brushes and involvement with the law goes back much, much further. First, donning a bulletproof vest on his way to the witness stand to testify against this man in 1982.
And I have every reason to believe that in time I will be vindicated.
Menendez's first political ally, William Musto, mayor of Union City, New Jersey, was indicted in a kickback scam and sentenced to prison. Menendez later winning that office and piling up political victory after victory. State Assembly, Congress, and all the way to the U.S. Senate in 2006. Almost immediately, Menendez was investigated by an ambitious U.S. attorney named Chris Christie. Looking into allegations, the senator took $300,000 in rent from a nonprofit in return for millions in federal grants. Menendez fired back, claiming it was all part of dirty campaigning. Quote, an orchestrated series of leaks, bogus ethics complaints, and outright fabrications. No charges were ever filed.
Now we're talking something potentially illegal.
Then in 2014, NBC New York breaks the news of a new and expanding investigation.
News 4 has learned the U.S. Justice Department is investigating Senator Menendez's efforts on behalf of two fugitive bankers from Ecuador.
The bankers, brothers, accused of ripping off their own bank to the tune of 9 figures. Ecuador wanted William and Roberto Esaias back.
Investigators say they want to know whether the senator attempted to influence immigration officials in 2012 in exchange for campaign donations.
At the time, a spokesperson for Menendez said the senator believed the brothers had been politically persecuted and that his office helps hundreds of individuals with the immigration process. No charges would be filed against Menendez involving the Banker brothers, and they stayed in the U.S. But part of that same investigation took a look into contributions by a big-time eye doctor, his private plane, and allegations of favors, leading to this moment in 2015.
Senator Bob Menendez is expected in court this morning.
The senator, who by this time was the chair of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee, was indicted for taking bribes from a South Florida optometrist named Solomon Melgen. Prosecutors said Menendez flew on Melgen's private jet to luxury Caribbean resorts. Then they alleged Melgen gave him tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. In exchange, the senator helped Melgen get a federal port security contract in the Dominican Republic and other favors, all according to the indictment.
These allegations are false, and I am confident they will be proven false.
The trial took months and featured a who's who of Washington, including a senator from the other side of the aisle, testifying for the defense.
If Bob gives you his word, he keeps it no matter what the pressures are, and I always found him to be a very honest and honorable guy.
For Menendez, a mistrial was declared in November of 2017 after the jury deadlocked. Melgen pleaded not guilty in the bribery case, but was charged and convicted in a separate healthcare fraud scheme. Melgen would ultimately receive clemency from former President Trump, and who supported the commuted sentence, according to a White House statement? Senator Menendez. Several years after those investigations concluded, the senator and his new wife were back on the radar of the FBI. It started with a search of a halal businessman's phone and became an indictment, alleging the senator and his wife Nadine were involved in a bribery scheme involving gold bars, a Mercedes-Benz, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Allegations Menendez denies.
Those charges are as outrageous as they are absurd.
Saying it was his wife that received the benefits, not him, and that he was unaware of her conduct. His alleged illegality drawing criticism even from a Democratic colleague in the Senate.
He's got to go.
A jury of his peers will now decide whether Menendez becomes a felon, while his constituents will vote in November whether to give him another term in the U.S. Senate. Tom Winter, NBC News, New York.
Still to come here on the show, one global beauty pageant now crowning a winner. But here's the thing, she's not real. We'll explain. So there is a new beauty pageant winner making headlines tonight from Morocco. Lots to say, but here's the catch. She's not real. In fact, she or it is the first AI beauty pageant winner ever. On Instagram, this AI influencer says she's incredibly grateful for the opportunity to represent AI creators and advocate passionately, her words, its words, for the positive impact of AI. This pageant, just the latest platform for virtual influencers. That's something we've talked about before on the show. It feels like more and more we're seeing these kinds of quote-unquote fake influencers featured in fashion campaigns and ads, sometimes in place of your favorite celebrity or creator. Emily Aketa is following this one for us, and it's so interesting, right? Because if like we showed you that picture, I don't know that you'd be able to tell that that was AI right there, because it looks so similar to the actual people that we see on Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. What's the criteria for something on a pageant like this, and what's the point behind competing in it?
I had to do a double take on so many of these different contestants, Hallie. They really are so lifelike. Well, aside from the glaringly obvious fact that these are not real people, a lot of the judging when it came to this, they saw a lot of parallels to a traditional pageant competition. So they looked at these various categories, one being realism and beauty. So they're looking at beauty, poise, how they answered questions in these videos that were posted online. Secondly, they would look at the technology, the attention to detail. Remember, these are text prompts that lead to AI-generated photos and images on social media. They're looking at the detail of the backdrop, and every single detail. Their hands are generated by AI. And then thirdly, they're looking and considering social clout. So essentially the engagement with these different AI-generated personalities with fans on social medias. The winner, for instance, Kenza Laley, she had accumulated nearly 200,000 followers on Instagram. Other contestants similarly so. Some landed even brand deals. Laley, you would see on Instagram, she had dozens of posts. She would post pictures of tennis and travel. There was even an OOTD outfit of the day moment. Here is the AI-generated acceptance speech. Take a listen.
Winning Miss AI motivates me even more to continue my work in advancing AI technology. AI isn't just a tool. It's a transformative force that can disrupt industries, challenge norms, and create opportunities where none existed before.
Okay, so not perfect. If you're watching closely, you would see that the lips were a little off from the audio, but even so, it's stunning to see just how far AI has come. And that was a large purpose of the Miss AI competition, is demonstrating, showcasing the technology, Hallie.
But there's also a bit of a double-edged sword here, right, Emily? Like there's potentially a risk.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things is the fact that it is so real. There are some people that may not notice that it is AI generated. And so some of the concerns, some of the red flags people are raising is the fact that, okay, well, is this proliferating? Is this further continuing this unrealistic beauty standard that already exists and that actually pageant competitions have received criticism over decades for? And so that's one of the things that we're hearing a lot about. If you look at a survey, it shows that Gen Z, 35%, much lower than I would have anticipated, care about authenticity authenticity when they're looking at influencers. A higher number of people care about the follower count. So I think there's this question, are we totally losing touch with losing touch and getting away from unedited photos? Are we totally leaning into the filters and AI-generated stuff? It's worthy questions, Hallie.
Emily Aketa, let's keep it going, this discussion on Instagram, where you will find plenty of unedited, filterless photos. Emily, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. Interesting conversations for sure. More coverage picks up right now. We're coming on the air tonight with extreme weather battering the south and west, a potentially deadly storm surge washing away parts of Texas, and a blistering heat wave breaking records in California. We are live coast to coast in just a minute. Plus, the tense back and forth over visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House. As President Biden, he's defiant in a new interview, insisting voters are with him, even if elites are not. What you should know about the state of the race and our team's new reporting. Then, in our original, former President Trump now distancing himself from a controversial plan to overhaul the government as we know it. So how does that shape up with the official Republican proposal just released today? Plus, the AI revolution trying to shake up the pageant world. How? By becoming one of them. We'll explain later in the show. Plus, a superstar in court today in one of the most high-profile cases in years. We are there live. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we start with that urgent new warning about a dangerous and possibly deadly storm surge after Hurricane Beryl slammed into Texas as a Category 1. About to show you here all the flooding from the water getting pushed in by really intense winds. This is Sargent Beach in Texas. Take a look. You're going to see homes destroyed, dozens of them now underwater. We're talking wind at 80 miles an hour, water levels up to 6 feet with rain still coming down now. Even a few tornadoes popping up as this storm turns deadly. 2 people reported killed by trees falling on their homes outside Houston. Millions of people are in the dark as we speak. Internet service is patchy, and this thing's a travel nightmare. More than 1,300 flights canceled, most of them into or out of Texas airports. And that's not even the only weather system threatening people tonight, as dangerous and record-breaking heat is fueling out-of-control wildfires. We've got it all covered with Steve Patterson in California, meteorologist Bill Karen standing by. But I want to start with Kathy Park, who is live for us in Texas. And Kathy, listen, the power is out. People can't get online. Some people have no homes to return to. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing tonight.
So, Hallie, you are probably seeing a big change from what we saw earlier this morning. The skies have cleared. The storm has pushed on out of here, but we are still seeing hazards just about everywhere here in Houston. And keep in mind, this storm, as you mentioned, made landfall early this morning along the coast and then pushed inland, but it still packed quite a punch. Earlier this morning, we were tracking heavy bands of rain, extreme winds, and all of that really led to this, what you're seeing right now. We're right by the bayou, and you can still see some of the water spilling over this roadway. I can tell you this road completely shut in both directions. We haven't seen any cars come through here because floodwaters have blocked both of these roads. And these are scenes that are playing out all across Houston. In fact, earlier today, we spoke with one motorist about the conditions today. Take a listen.
Every year, it seems like the hurricanes are predicted to be much worse than they actually turn out to be. And for the first one of this season, I mean, I think it's a wake-up call here.
And Hallie, in addition to the flooding that we continue to track, we're also following massive power outages, hundreds of thousands of customers still without power. It could be days, perhaps, before everyone is back online, but the temperature keeps climbing. We can actually feel the heat starting to accumulate here in Houston. But we should also say that this storm has also turned deadly as well. Right now, at least 2 confirmed fatalities in Harris County. We know that trees actually fell onto homes, and that's how those 2 individuals were killed. Hallie?
And this is another big issue here, this heat that is moving into Texas, as you talk about there, Kathy, as people don't have power to try to cool them down. All of it, Texas clearly in a moment of crisis, as the governor is actually not in the state. He's overseas and apparently getting some flack about it. Talk to us.
Yeah, there is some fallout that we are tracking on social media because he tweeted not too long ago about his ongoing trip in South Korea. He said it was a business trip that he is trying to broker with South Korean officials. Meanwhile, we saw a string of comments, people criticizing this move, saying, look, we have this storm that has barreled through this area. A lot of folks still reeling, kind of assessing the damage right now. Hundreds of thousands of people without power. It could be days before all of that is restored. So a lot of criticism there, especially on social media. But we should also point out that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is standing in his place right now, holding press conferences. So is the mayor of Houston, just kind of keeping abreast on the situation. Take a listen.
What I want to emphasize in this briefing is, please, Houstonians, anyone that can hear my voice, shelter in place. Shelter in place. We're in an emergency. We're in a rescue mode, life safety.
And Hallie, a lot of these warnings actually came last night. They were told to stay in place, shelter in place around 10 o'clock last night. We were kind of monitoring the conditions during the overnight hours. Not a lot of cars on the roadways, but I can tell you right now that the skies have opened up and the weather has improved, we are still seeing a lot of folks coming out, just kind of surveying the scene, and then a lot of folks taking it by foot as well. Hallie?
Kathy Park, live for us out there in Texas. Kathy, thank you. Let me get to Steve Patterson now because, Steve, we talked about the extreme weather hitting not just the South, but also out west where you are in California. You've got these huge fires burning, evacuation orders near some of these very popular summer tourist spots like Yosemite, like Tahoe. Talk to us about the latest.
Yeah, the thing that is extreme about all of this, Hallie, is how early it's happening. Usually fire season in earnest actually starts like heading into the fall because it's the combination of the winds mixed with the heat. This year, I mean, I swear there have been 20 major fires burning at all times out west since mid to late June. That is beyond unusual. That could be a historic fire season because thousands of acres have already burned. Hundreds of people have been evacuated in multiple places. It has been abhorrent so far. It is this awful game of whack-a-mole, and I don't mean to make light of it, but mechanically, as soon as some of the fires lay down, new ones sprout up, and that's what we're seeing right now. Right now, the biggest fire in California is the Lake Fire. It's more than 20,000 acres. It's 8% contained, which sounds like it's relatively small, but they've made some progress, which is good. That fire is burning near Santa Barbara. It's also burning near Michael Jackson's old Neverland Ranch. It's affecting a bunch of ranches. That one is on the very edge of. That's a 27,000-acre property. It's actually bigger than the fire that it's burning near right now, but that's a danger as well as several communities in that area. But just to give you a sense of this, I mean, one of the fires, there were 13 hikers had to be rescued from a fire burning near Tahoe. That fire is only about 176 acres, less than 200 acres. Again, a 20,000-acre fire and a fire that's less than 200 acres, and people had to be rescued from that. It tells you how quickly these fires can burn because the wind can cut through this bone-dry grass, which is all exacerbated, and I want to say this, by this incredible, extreme, disgusting heat dome that we are all in. We are trapped in this heat, and so too are the dry grasses, so too are the firefighters that are trying to fight these fires. You see the containment numbers on your screen? Those are relatively good. Again, they're pushing them out, but tomorrow, the next day, the day after that, that screen's going to look totally different, and that's what we've been experiencing this year so far, Hallie. It's been pretty miserable for firefighters trying to do their best, but they're out there in 110, 115-degree heat trying to put out a fire that is freshly fueled by this heat dome. Hallie?
Steve Patterson, thank you very much, live for us from L.A. Let's get to Bill Cairns now. So, Bill, when will this heat dome dissipate and give folks some relief?
Towards the weekend, but it's only going to like temporarily give relief. And, you know, Hallie, it's just one thing or another. You know, on the East Coast, we got like extreme humidity. On the West Coast, we got these all-time record high temperatures. And then, of course, we're still dealing with Beryl. And we had that as a hurricane this morning. And now we're in the middle of this tornado outbreak from that hurricane and the bands around it. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tornado warnings right now active in Louisiana and East Texas and now into Arkansas, all because of Beryl and the outer bands from it. So, you know, sometimes sometimes you get these storms and they produce tornadoes. Some don't produce a lot, and some tropical systems do. And this one's turning out to be one that is. We just have a new one reported just south of Shreveport. So we got 3 tornado warnings lined up here. And you can see this is for the center of Beryl. There's another tornado report right here. So zooming in on the Shreveport area, it looks like these storms are moving at about 40 miles per hour. So this is going to be probably tornado sirens going off in Shreveport, Louisiana, in about 10 to 15 minutes from right now. We got one cell here, we got another one here, and another here. So 3 different possible tornado-producing thunderstorms, all approaching Interstate 20. And with the storm itself, you can notice it's starting to fall apart a little bit. And just look at this band of heavy rain wrapping all the way around it. This is where we're getting flash flooding problems, too, right along the Louisiana border. The storm itself, when it made landfall, for a Category 1, this was pretty impressive. 14, 15 inches of rain in Alvin. Houston downtown had about a foot of rain. That's why we had so many water problems there. And for a Category 1, these wind gusts were impressive, too. I've seen Category 2s not produce wind gusts like this. Freeport was almost up to 100. Galveston, 92, 80, about 89 to Category. And even in downtown Houston, there was a wind gust of 86 miles per hour. And you could see all those flash flood warnings in those same spots that actually are under the tornado warning. And another 4 to 6 inches is likely tonight, Arkansas into Missouri. And Hallie, as far as the heat goes, I don't know if you stepped outside in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. It feels right now in the shade like 105 degrees. One of the hottest spots on all of the East Coast.
My friend, there's a reason I was asking about the heat dome, asking for a friend, many of them who live here in the neighborhood. Bill Cairns, thank you very much. Lots to watch for over the next week. Appreciate it. To our other big headline tonight, a defiant President Biden insisting again today he will stay in this race in a new interview as questions swirl about whether or not he should. And his White House now refusing to say whether a Parkinson's expert who visited the White House at least 8 times in 8 months was there to see President Biden himself. Listen to some of this.
I'm not going to confirm a name. What I can share with you is that the president has seen a neurologist for his physical 3 times. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No, I'm not going to confirm a specialist, any specialist that comes to the White House out of privacy.
Okay, let's be clear here. We don't know the reason for these trips, the nature of them. We haven't gotten any comment from that expert, whose name, by the way, was in the visitors' logs. And the White House had said President Biden's physicals have found no sign of Parkinson's. And again, because you can track these visits on that log, our White House team cross-checked the timing. Turns out the president was only physically in D.C. 3 of those 8 times that the doctor visited the White House. Now, the president himself is telling Morning Joe today, this is before that news broke in most major outlets, that he's tested cognitively in the day-to-day course of doing his job, doing interviews, holding meetings, etc. And listen, defiant is the word of the day, because that's how he sounded as he decried the disconnect he sees between the Beltway and the Rust Belt. Listen.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention.
I want to show you here the lawmakers, at least some of them, who have called on the president to withdraw from the race after his disastrous debate performance. With lawmakers back on Capitol Hill today and a meeting set for later tonight between the president and members of the influential Congressional Black Caucus, according to 2 sources, who may be throwing him a lifeline. You've got the president also talking with donors late today, stacking his calendar with public events in what could be the biggest political fight of his decades-long career. We've got team coverage on this. Sahil Kapoor standing by on the Hill, but I want to start with Hallie Rafa near the White House. Hallie, a critical moment for the president, right? There's a lot to this, but let's start with some of that new reporting about this Parkinson's specialist making trips to the White House. There's a lot of context on this one, but talk us through the dynamics in the building behind you.
Yeah, Hallie, and as you mentioned, the White House knew going into this week how incredibly critical it would be in really determining its next steps, the president's political future. And in an effort to offer some clarity after this new revelation that, according to these White House visitor logs that are public, that a neurologist visited the White House at least 8 times over the last 8 months, trying to explain and offer some clarity, the White House only seemed to have created more confusion during, as you saw in that clip there,
a very, at times, contentious press briefing with Karine Jean-Pierre as reporters were trying to get down to the details here. What happened, though, is obviously the opposite of what the White House wanted right now to talk about in that briefing, that NATO summit that they expect to be a great opportunity for the president to dispel these growing concerns about his age, his mental acuity, show his foreign policy chops. But what happened was the opposite, and we started to see some holes in the information that we have about the president's health. And I think it's important to note the reasoning for this push to have some clarity, because there has been mixed messaging from within the White House before as it relates to the president's health. You'll remember right after his debate performance, they talked about how he had a cold. The White House and the president had differing talking points as far as what happened after that, as far as a doctor checkup. But today, definitely a contentious press briefing as reporters tried to get more clarity. And frankly, the appetite is not going to go away, Hallie.
You know, one of the points that President Biden has tried to make here more broadly amid these questions of whether or not he should stay in the race, and again, he is making very clear he is in, is this idea that what the so-called shattering class, if you will, the inside the Beltway folks say versus what voters on the ground actually say. And it appears that the Biden campaign is looking to some core parts of the Democratic constituency, black voters, union workers, for example, to help essentially get him a lifeline here. This is something I talked about with somebody who I know you talked to, Cedric Richmond, a co-chair of the Biden-Harris campaign. Let me play a piece of that interview.
The president said he's not going anywhere. And we're going to go and we're going to win this election. It's too important for the American people. And we're going to remind people that actions speak louder than words.
More of that tonight on Nightly News. But talk to us about the actions then, because the president's got a busy week ahead. He's got this high-profile summit. He's got an even more high-profile solo news conference coming up soon, too.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're seeing this shift in the president's argument for why he wants to stay in this race. He's saying it's because voters want him to stay, whereas for months we heard him say, you know, it's because he is the best positioned, the most qualified to defeat Trump a second time. And we heard that again today. We saw it in that lengthy letter the president said to Democrats on Capitol Hill, saying the reason he is the Democratic nominee is because that's what voters wanted in those primaries, that voters positioned him to be the nominee. He also said that he's blocking out what millionaires say, that he only cares about what voters say. And now we're seeing these this travel from not just the president, but the four principals ramp up. The First Lady herself hitting 3 states today. Listen to some of her exchanges while on the campaign trail.
Dr. Biden, do you have any message to House Democrats who are calling for your husband to drop out of the race? How are you feeling about the state of the race? All right, ladies. Why are you screaming at me? You know me. Don't scream at me. Just let me talk.
Hallie, as these concerns grow, these calls for the president to step aside, these interactions between reporters and these 4 principals seem to be only growing more contentious. And we're going to see how that plays out later this week when the president himself hits the campaign trail, Hallie.
Hallie, Rafa, thank you. I want to get to Sahil Kapoor now with the view from Capitol Hill. So we talked about the idea that the Biden campaign is turning to this coalition, it seems, of voters who helped get him into the White House. Look at where he's been. He was at a black church in Philly on Sunday. He was at a union office in Harrisburg. He's headed to the NAACP convention next week. And now tonight, I know that you are reporting that the president is set to meet virtually with members of the influential Congressional Black Caucus, none of whom so far have called on him to withdraw from this race.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. We do expect this to be a virtual meeting, not in person, between President Biden and the Congressional Black Caucus. And this comes as the CBC has emerged as a vital lifeboat for President Biden in the midst of this intra-party storm over whether he should stay as the 2024 presidential nominee or whether he should go. This caucus and the voters it represents are very influential, both on Capitol Hill, but also in the Democratic Party in terms of choosing the nominee. And the fact that if President Biden were hypothetically to step aside, the likeliest replacement would be Vice President Kamala Harris, who would become, should she be elected, the first black woman president in the history of this country. The fact that the CBC is sticking with Biden is very significant on a number of levels. And of course, this week on Capitol Hill will be extremely important in determining whether lawmakers end up kind of sticking with President Biden, however reluctantly, or whether the dam breaks and whether there's a critical mass that comes out against the president staying. Let's take a listen to how some red state Democrats are handling it. Here's Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
I think this week is going to play out. I think everyone just calms down a little bit and waits for this week. I think this week is going to be a crucial time. And this week, I think it'll tell you an awful lot.
Now, Manchin is not running for re-election this year, but one person who is Senator Jon Tester in Montana. And he said in a statement that President Biden has got to prove to the American people, including me, that he is up to the job for another 4 years, Hallie.
So really quickly then, Sahil, you heard Senator Manchin, I think it was, say, basically the president has until the end of this week to kind of show Democrats what they've got, as these discussions are not ending where you are on Capitol Hill. It is not as though the president's interview with Morning Joe today came out and, stopped the discussion around this.
No, it certainly hasn't stopped the discussion around this, but the president is trying to stamp out this criticism, convey to Democratic members of Congress and Democratic candidates in that letter that he's going to be the nominee and they had better stick with him. The implication here is that not only could, failure to rally behind him end up electing Donald Trump, it could also hurt Democrats down the ballot. He's not saying this, but this is how it's being perceived by some Democrats. In that letter, he said the voters and the voters alone decide the nominee of the Democratic Party. And I think that's where we're going to hear a lot of discussion about who is best to defeat Donald Trump later this week. Hallie.
Sahil Kapoor live for us on the Hill. Thank you. Let's take you out to New Mexico now, where Alec Baldwin is in court as we speak, as his lawyers try to hammer out which evidence and testimony should be allowed during his trial set to begin tomorrow with jury selection. Look at this. You see Baldwin there. That's today, charged in the shooting death of the cinematographer on the set of his movie Rust. And today's pretrial motions setting the stage for one of the most high-profile trials of the year. Now, remember, Baldwin was rehearsing with a prop gun for a scene on October 21st back in 2021 when the gun went off, killing Halyna Hutchins. Baldwin has said he did not pull the trigger. He says the gun misfired a bullet. Baldwin was initially charged in January 2023 with 2 counts, both dropped in April of that year. Then a Santa Fe grand jury earlier this year renewed the manslaughter charge that he is now facing. Chloe Malas is in Santa Fe. She's joining us now. Chloe, talk about today in court. There's been a lot of back and forth about how the state is making their case in particular, right?
Hallie, the judge has ruled on several different motions about what evidence can be admissible during this 2-week trial and what sort of witness testimony. And there was a big win for Baldwin's defense team in that the judge ruled against the prosecution bringing up anything having to do with Baldwin also serving as a producer on the set. This was something that was a big part of the discussion over the last few years, is that Baldwin not just starring in the film, that he had some sort of a responsibility when it came to the safety standards on set. I want you to listen to a little bit from Johnson, one of the prosecutors, of what she had to say today.
That his conduct on set was reckless and it was in essentially wanton disregard for the safety of others. And his role as a producer made him keenly aware of the safety rules that apply on sets, what his responsibilities are.
So tomorrow is when jury selection begins, Hallie, and these 12 jurors, they're not going to know about Baldwin being a producer. That's not going to get into, they're not going to get into the weeds of that. So again, for the defense, they will strictly be talking about him as the actor holding the gun that day.
To say that it's been a long road of legal twists and turns is a bit of an understatement here, right? It has been a little dramatic to get to this point here, of course, notwithstanding the initial shooting and the death of Halyna Hutchins. What is the expectation for once this trial really gets started, and this question mark over whether Baldwin will take the stand in his own defense?
Well, so there are a lot of big questions. So let's start with Baldwin. So it's completely unclear whether or not he's going to take the stand in his own defense and testify. NBC News, we've reached out to his legal team for comment. They haven't said anything about that yet. And it could be a game time decision. When you talk to legal analysts, Hallie, you know, there are people on both sides, differing opinions. Some people say that when you put your client on the stand, that sometimes that can cause more harm than good. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer, just 4 months ago, she was convicted of the same charge of involuntary manslaughter. She's currently serving 18 months behind bars in a state jail. She is coming to Santa Fe, New Mexico this weekend. She's going to be called to the stand likely next week, but it's unclear if she's going to cooperate or potentially plead the fifth, Hallie.
Chloe Malas, live for us there in Santa Fe. Chloe, thank you for being there. I know more to come as the days continue this week. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show tonight, Republicans are out with a new party platform, basically stating for the public where they stand on the biggest issues that matter to you. More on that as the former president tries to distance himself from a controversial blueprint for a possible second term. Plus, why the Johns Hopkins Medical School says it'll now be free for most students. Alaska is trying to crack down on tourists, but some of them are pushing back. We're going to tell you how coming up in just a little bit. But first, to tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's the Republican National Committee laying out its 2024 policy platform, adopting former President Trump's preferred America First positions. This is a big deal. It's a first glimpse as to the agenda they're running on. But it comes as the former president is now distancing himself from a controversial blueprint for a second Trump term, one that's been used by his political opponents against him, called Project 2025. Former President Donald Trump in a new post online insisting he knows nothing about Project 2025, with no idea who's behind it, calling some of the controversial 900-page proposal to overhaul the federal government ridiculous and abysmal. The comments coming after Democrats pushed to tie Mr. Trump to the plan, created not by the Trump campaign itself, but by some former Trump administration officials working with conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation. Its president coming under fire just last week for this.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
So what is Project 2025?
What we're doing is systematically preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state.
That battle plan outlining several key proposals, including a federal government under much tighter presidential control. Even now, independent agencies like the Department of Justice would answer almost entirely to Mr. Trump. And it calls for replacing thousands of civil employees with political appointees, presumably loyal to the former president. Project 2025 calls for more spending for a U.S.-Mexico border wall, a signature Trump proposal back in 2016.
Build that wall.
And on this side of the border, big cuts to corporate taxes and income tax for America's highest earners. The plan taking aim at what it calls woke culture warriors, calling for deleting a long list of terms from all federal rules, including sexual orientation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and gender identity, and eliminating the education department. It's not uncommon for think tanks to create wish lists for governments in waiting, but with the race for the White House all but deadlocked, Democratic opposition to the plan has ramped up against what Congressman Jared Huffman, behind the Stop Project 2025 task force, calls a dystopian plot.
I think what troubles me the most is just the explicitness of the extremism, and the people who are saying these things are the most inner circle leaders of Donald Trump's political world.
Those behind Project 2025 accuse Democrats of fear-mongering.
This really would tee up an incoming administration to achieve more than we've ever seen under a conservative president before.
Now, a spokesperson for Project 2025 says in a post on X that the group does not speak for any candidate or campaign. And in response to those controversial comments on an American revolution, the head of the Heritage Foundation tells the New York Times, quote, "These patriots are committed to peaceful revolution at the ballot box." Now, President Biden, for his part, in a statement, says Project 2025 would give Mr. Trump limitless power over our daily lives. I want to bring in our Vaughn Hilliard, who's been taking a look, got his hands on that new Republican Party platform for us. And Vaughn, a bunch of questions here, but let me start. How is it similar or different to what we've seen in the Project 2025 agenda?
Right, Hallie. And actually, if I may, first, in the bad timing category, I had a scheduled interview with the director of Project 2025 scheduled for literally today, but I got a call on Saturday night after that post on social media by Donald Trump, and that interview was canceled with the director of Project 2025. And in these last hours, the Republican Party, at least the platform committee to the convention next week, has approved that the policy, the platform for the Republican Party, very much show in the shape and the mindset of that of Donald Trump. A couple points. Number one, the Project 2025 platform is more than 900 pages, and essentially it's a handbook that would be able to be handed to every department and agency in a second Trump administration. And of course, some of the proposals were concerning to individuals that included Donald Trump, clearly. But Donald Trump, I should note that one of the authors of Project 2025 was also the policy director of the Republican National Committee's platform committee here that just wrote this document that was approved here today. So there is, to note, a lot of overlap.
Okay, let's talk about the policy platform overall, because interestingly, Vaughn, it softens the Republican Party's official position on some key issues like same-sex marriage, but perhaps more importantly on abortion access as well, at a moment when clearly Republicans are falling behind as it relates to polling Democrats on this one.
Right, and that is where, if you look at the past party platform that was last adopted by the Republican Party in 2016, it very explicitly called for what they called a human life amendment to be added to the U.S. Constitution, and for legislation to be passed up on Capitol Hill, federal legislation, all but banning abortion. And so you're looking at this policy platform that was put in, or at least passed by the platform committee here today under Donald Trump. It takes that a step back, and instead, it does not call for a federal abortion ban, but instead suggests, as Donald Trump often does on the campaign trail, that this is a decision that should be left to the states. And in a similar way, we saw the 2016 policy platform on same-sex marriage say that marriage should be between one man and one woman. That language was removed from this 2024 version to only say that the sanctity of marriage should be upheld.
Okay, let me talk about the other big news this week. It is news that has yet to happen, which is the official pick of a running mate from former President Trump. It's got to be this week, right? I mean, the convention starts on Monday. You think it has to happen before Monday?
Right. The clock is ticking here. There is going to be a campaign event down in Florida tomorrow that our colleague John Allen has been told by an advisor to Senator Marco Rubio that the Florida senator will be attending. We are told that he is a potential VP finalist himself here, but he then has a campaign rally, Hallie, in Pennsylvania on Saturday, so that announcement could happen then. But you said it. It's a week from today in Milwaukee that the Republican National Convention begins, so you can start the clock here. It's going to be at least within the next 7-8 days for that individual
Vaughn,
to get the call.
The clock has been started. I'm waiting for you to go pitch a tent on Marco Rubio's driveway, so I'm sure that's your next live shot, friend. Thank you much. Lots to watch. We'll be talking
Hallie.
again. Appreciate you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Paramount and Skydance will merge. They've now come to a deal after this whole months-long drama, saga, pick your noun, and just weeks after a similar deal totally fell apart. They plan to, for example, use AI to be more efficient, to cut costs, and to rebuild Paramount Plus. Number 2, Columbia University says it'll remove 3 administrators from their positions over text messages that, in their words, disturbingly touched on ancient anti-Semitic tropes. The administrators sent those texts during a campus discussion about Jewish life. Columbia first put them on leave last month. The dean of Columbia College, one of the undergrad schools, has apologized and will stay in his role. Number 3, the FAA will require the inspections of some 2,600 Boeing 737s because passenger oxygen masks may not work in an emergency. Apparently, they've gotten reports of oxygen generators getting out of position. Boeing tells NBC News that a new adhesive it introduced years ago did allow some units to shift and that it's now gone back to its original adhesive. Number 4, Bloomberg Philanthropies says it's giving $1 billion with a B, $1 billion to the Johns Hopkins University, which means med students from families earning less than $300,000 a year will go to med school for free. No tuition there. You're seeing the undergrad campus here. Its founder, Michael Bloomberg, the Philanthropies founder, went to Johns Hopkins for undergrad. He says lowering some of these financial barriers will let more students pursue careers in medicine that they're passionate about. And number 5, the U.S. men's soccer team rolling out the roster today for the Paris Olympics. First time since 2008 that the men will compete in the games, since they didn't qualify the last few times. They're going to face off against France July 24th, 2 days before the opening ceremony. Get your calendars ready. When we come back, super scary moment caught on camera in New Hampshire. We'll tell you how a 17-year-old stopped an out-of-control boat. Look at that. Plus, why the French president is refusing to accept the resignation of the country's prime minister. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a pretty scary rescue caught on camera in New Hampshire. Look at this. That's a boat spinning out of control around a busy lake. The driver of the boat had fallen overboard. Look at this 17-year-old jumping from the jet ski he was riding, jumping straight onto the boat. That is incredible, very scary and dangerous, but he was okay. He got the boat under control before anybody else got hurt. Just amazing. Out of our Western Bureau, the capital of Alaska might ban cruise ships with more than 250 passengers from docking on Saturdays. Some locals in Juneau say the number of visitors has been overwhelming, but then others say, well, wait a second. If you ban the big cruise ships and all those people on weekends, that's going to hurt tourism in town. The whole thing is set to go up for a vote in October. Also out of our Western Bureau, a mountain lion cub getting released back into the wild in California 7 months after he was hit by a car. The local Humane Society found him on the side of the road and nursed him back to health. Now they say he's fully recovered. He's also getting a GPS collar so they can keep an eye on him. Let's take you overseas now, because tonight in France, uncertainty and political limbo after a pretty stunning left-wing surge in the final round of voting in elections there for parliament. Thousands of people, want to show you, hitting the streets to celebrate the victory over the right-wing National Rally Party. Police in Paris having to use tear gas to clear out the crowds. But tonight, the political system is in more disarray than it was before the vote, with President Macron meeting with the prime minister, urging him not to resign, as is tradition, to assure the stability of the country. NBC's Josh Letterman is joining us now from Paris. A ton of turnout here, the most in 4 decades. So how did the left pull this off, and where does this go next?
Well, they pulled it off, Hallie, by forming a last-minute firewall against the far right. Essentially, in the first round of voting, voters were split between multiple candidates. There was a leftist candidate, a centrist candidate, a far-right candidate. In the second round, the left and the centrists essentially consolidated their vote around one, not the far-right candidate, giving voters only one other option, and that was enough to keep the far right from claiming that majority. As far as what goes on from here, that is the big question. It is going to be very uncertain, an unprecedented period of divided government for France.
Big gamble from Macron here by dissolving parliament, calling for this snap election. Did it pay off?
Not really. It paid off in the fact that the far right did not get the votes that they were expected to get, but it did not pay off in terms of him maintaining any kind of a majority or a coalition under which he can govern. In fact, he had a prime minister of his party before, Gabriel Attal. He's not going to anymore. He's going to have to pick someone from the left. And so all of the experts here, the political scientists we've been speaking to, say they simply cannot understand the logic of why President Macron went ahead with this gamble. But certainly it did not lead to a situation where he's in a better political space than he was before.
Of course, you're standing on streets where in just about 2 weeks, tourists will be flooding because of the Olympics set to kick off in Paris not long from now. I don't want to draw connections or pull threads where threads don't exist, but you've got on the one hand political turmoil in the country that on the other hand is hosting this humongous international, highly watched event very soon.
That's right. We've been looking into what the actual implications of that are. It is true that certain government ministries, like the Interior Ministry, which oversees security, we don't know who's going to be running that 3 weeks from now when the Olympic Games get started. That having been said, most of the arrangements have been made a long time ago. Authorities here are saying it's not actually going to change anything on the ground. But the reality is it's not a good look for France. This is their moment in the spotlight to really showcase their country in front of the entire world. And their political system is in a period of turmoil with a lot of uncertainty about whether they're actually going to be able to govern going forward. And so it's clear this is not the face that France wanted to put on to the rest of the world during these upcoming Olympic Games, Hallie.
Josh Letterman, thank you very much. Also overseas, the Indian Prime Minister is in Russia tonight, where he had his first visit with the Russian leader since the invasion of Ukraine. You can see them both here as Moscow is launching one of its biggest attacks on Ukraine in months, hitting a children's hospital in Kyiv, killing at least 2 people and hurting 50 others, including kids. You see it here, first responders desperately searching for anybody who might be trapped. Other attacks across the country have hit homes, a college, and a business center. In all, 37 people killed, 170 hurt. Danielle Hamamdjian is joining us now. Explain this visit to Russia by the Prime Minister, by Prime Minister Modi here, the relationship between these two, as Modi is kind of walking this pretty fine line.
He is walking a fine line, and for the United States, it's a relationship that's concerning, and American officials have conveyed those concerns to their Indian counterparts. Publicly, India has said that high on the agenda will be fixing the trade imbalance, essentially India wanting to export more of its goods and services to Russia. Where the Ukrainian war is concerned, India has not criticized or condemned Russia at all since the beginning of the war in February 2022, and has urged both sides to resolve things through dialogue and diplomatically, all the while buying a lot more cheap Russian oil, which has been shunned by the West. So you're right, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, walking a fine line there. But during, of course, this period of the war, Russia has gotten closer to China. China, of course, being a rival to India. And so that fine line of keeping and maintaining relations with the West, but also ensuring Russia doesn't get too close to China.
Of course, back here at home, President Biden is hosting this critical NATO summit this week, and this attack in Kyiv on that children's hospital comes right before that. We know from senior administration officials that there are expected to be new announcements, they say, about support for Ukraine here. Talk us through any connection.
Well, Ukraine and others will say that it's certainly not a coincidence that this happened on the eve of this summit. Volodymyr Zelensky is certainly expecting to ask for more air defense systems, something that he's been asking for repeatedly. But Russia, on the other hand, has said, and this is not the first time that it's claimed, that every time there is a NATO summit on the eve, Ukraine claims it was attacked on its soil and claims and justifies its request for more money and more weapons. What we do know is that there is going to be a UN meeting tomorrow regarding this attack on the children's hospital, which Zelensky has called a war crime. And during this meeting, Russia has said that it will present its version of events of what happened today.
Danielle Hamemjian, thank you very much for that reporting. Coming up here on the show, closing arguments beginning today here at home in the bribery trial of a sitting U.S. senator. We're going to explain where things stand in just a sec. So the federal corruption trial against sitting Senator Bob Menendez is hitting a new phase today, with prosecutors kicking off closing arguments after weeks of testimony. And the New Jersey Democrats accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, trading state secrets for cash, for gold bars, even mortgage payments. Here's the timing. The jury, we think, will hear more from prosecutors tomorrow, and then the defense begins its closing arguments in a case that could end the three-term senator's long political career. Menendez has pleaded not guilty. But this is not the first time he's been investigated for getting too cozy with his donors. NBC's Tom Winter looks at the history of allegations against him in our breakdown.
Senator Robert Menendez, elected to office decade after decade.
The government has failed to prove every aspect of its case.
And now for almost a decade, answering questions about federal investigations and corruption charges.
The senator and his wife accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes.
In the midst of his biggest legal challenge yet, experts say, New Jersey's senior Democratic senator charged with accusations he's been criminally cozy with his benefactors just last year.
Can a convicted felon win re-election?
But the senator's brushes and involvement with the law goes back much, much further. First, donning a bulletproof vest on his way to the witness stand to testify against this man in 1982.
And I have every reason to believe that in time I will be vindicated.
Menendez's first political ally, William Musto, mayor of Union City, New Jersey, was indicted in a kickback scam and sentenced to prison. Menendez later winning that office and piling up political victory after victory. State Assembly, Congress, and all the way to the U.S. Senate in 2006. Almost immediately, Menendez was investigated by an ambitious U.S. attorney named Chris Christie. Looking into allegations, the senator took $300,000 in rent from a nonprofit in return for millions in federal grants. Menendez fired back, claiming it was all part of dirty campaigning. Quote, an orchestrated series of leaks, bogus ethics complaints, and outright fabrications. No charges were ever filed.
Now we're talking something potentially illegal.
Then in 2014, NBC New York breaks the news of a new and expanding investigation.
News 4 has learned the U.S. Justice Department is investigating Senator Menendez's efforts on behalf of 2 fugitive bankers from Ecuador.
The bankers, brothers, accused of ripping off their own bank to the tune of 9 figures. Ecuador wanted William and Roberto Esaias back.
Investigators say they want to know whether the senator attempted to influence immigration officials in 2012 in exchange for campaign donations.
At the time, a spokesperson for Menendez said the senator believed the brothers had been politically persecuted and that his office helps hundreds of individuals with the immigration process. No charges would be filed against Menendez involving the banker brothers, and they stayed in the U.S. But part of that same investigation took a look into contributions by a big-time eye doctor, his private plane, and allegations of favors, leading to this moment in 2015.
Senator Bob Menendez is expected in court this morning.
The senator, who by this time was the chair of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee, was indicted for taking bribes from a South Florida optometrist named Solomon Melgen. Prosecutors said Menendez flew on Melgen's private jet to luxury Caribbean resorts. Then they alleged Melgen gave him tens of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. In exchange, the senator helped Melgen get a federal port security contract in the Dominican Republic and other favors, all according to the indictment.
These allegations are false, and I am confident they will be proven false.
The trial took months and featured a who's who of Washington, including a senator from the other side of the aisle, testifying for the defense.
If Bob gives you his word, he keeps it no matter what the pressures are, and I always found him to be a very honest and honorable guy.
For Menendez, a mistrial was declared in November of 2017 after the jury deadlocked. Melgen pleaded not guilty in the bribery case, but was charged and convicted in a separate healthcare fraud scheme. Melgen would ultimately receive clemency from former President Trump, and who supported the commuted sentence, according to a White House statement? Senator Menendez. Several years after those investigations concluded, the senator and his new wife were back on the radar of the FBI. It started with a search of a halal businessman's phone and became an indictment, alleging the senator and his wife Nadine were involved in a bribery scheme involving gold bars, a Mercedes-Benz, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Allegations Menendez denies.
Those charges are as outrageous as they are absurd.
Saying it was his wife that received the benefits, not him, and that he was unaware of her conduct. His alleged illegality drawing criticism even from a Democratic colleague in the Senate.
He's got to go.
A jury of his peers will now decide whether Menendez becomes a felon, while his constituents will vote in November whether to give him another term in the U.S. Senate. Tom Winter, NBC News, New York.
Still to come here on the show, one global beauty pageant now crowning a winner. But here's the thing, she's not real. We'll explain. So there is a new beauty pageant winner making headlines tonight from Morocco. Lots to say, but here's the catch. She's not real. In fact, she or it is the first AI beauty pageant winner ever on Instagram. This AI influencer says she's incredibly grateful for the opportunity to represent AI creators and advocate passionately, her words, its words, for the positive impact of AI. This pageant, just the latest platform for virtual influencers. That's something we've talked about before on this show. It feels like more and more we're seeing these kinds of quote-unquote fake influencers featured in fashion campaigns and ads, sometimes in place of your favorite celebrity or creator. Emily Aketa is following this one for us, and it's so interesting, right? Because if like we showed you that picture, I don't know that you'd be able to tell that that was AI right there, because it looks so similar to the actual people that we see on Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. What's the criteria for something on a pageant like this, and what's the point behind competing in it?
I had to do a double take on so many of these different contestants, Hallie. They really are so lifelike. Well, aside from the glaringly obvious fact that these are not real people, a lot of the judging when it came to this, they saw a lot of parallels to a traditional pageant competition. So they looked at these various categories, one being realism and beauty. So they're looking at beauty, poise, how they answered questions in these videos that were posted online. Secondly, they would look at the technology, the attention to detail. Remember, these are text prompts that lead to AI-generated AI-generated photos and images on social media. They're looking at the detail of the backdrop, and every single detail. Their hands are generated by AI. And then thirdly, they're looking and considering social clout. So essentially the engagement with these different AI-generated personalities with fans on social medias. The winner, for instance, Kenza Laley, she had accumulated nearly 200,000 followers on Instagram. Other contestants similarly so. Some landed even brand deals. Laley, you would see on Instagram, she had dozens of posts. She would post pictures of tennis and travel. There was even an OOTD outfit of the day moment. Here is the AI-generated acceptance speech. Take a listen.
Winning Miss AI motivates me even more to continue my work in advancing AI technology. AI isn't just a tool. It's a transformative force that can disrupt industries, challenge norms, and create opportunities where none existed before.
Okay, so not perfect. If you're watching closely, you would see that the lips were a little off from the audio, but even so, it's stunning to see just how far AI has come. And that was a large purpose of the Miss AI competition, is demonstrating, showcasing the technology, Hallie.
But there's also a bit of a double-edged sword here, right, Emily? Yeah. Like there's potentially a risk.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things is the fact that it is so real. There are some people that may not notice that it is AI generated. And so some of the concerns, some of the red flags people are raising is the fact that, okay, well, is this proliferating? Is this further continuing this unrealistic beauty standard that already exists and that actually pageant competitions have received a criticism over decades for? And so that's one of the things that we're hearing a lot about. If you look at a survey, it shows that Gen Z, 35%, much lower than I would have anticipated, care about authenticity when they're looking at influencers. A higher number of people care about the follower count. So I think there's this question, are we totally losing touch with losing touch and getting away from unedited photos? Are we totally leaning into the filters and AI generated stuff? It's worthy questions, Hallie.
Emily Aketa, let's keep it going, this discussion on Instagram, where you will find plenty of unedited, filterless photos. Emily, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. Interesting conversations for sure. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.